The nervous system, part 1. So in this little video introducing you to the nervous system, we'll look at the difference between the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, that's CNS and PNS. We'll look a little bit at the pathway through which we send signals through the neurons, and a little bit about how the different types of neurons connect. So, as you know, we use our mind to control our actions. Specifically, what you're using there is your nervous system. And the major parts of it are your brain, your spinal cord, and then 3 different types of nerves. Sensory nerves that are used in your senses, so touch, taste, smell, etc. You're picking up those senses through nerves. Those are then linked to connecting nerves, which then link to motor nerves. And those motor nerves will then send a signal to part of your body to move something. So your nervous system, when we're talking about that system, we're talking about an interconnected network of signals that are sent to and from your brain normally. So they're sending electrical impulses along them. The pathway of cells that they travel along, that's what we call the nerves. It's actually more than one system, and we look at 2 subsystems really. Your central nervous system, which is the brain and the spinal cord, and then this extensive peripheral nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is highly branched and reaches all different parts of your body. We can also then split the peripheral nervous system into the part that controls your voluntary actions, which is your somatic nervous system, and the part that controls any involuntary actions, which we call your autonomic one. And we'll look at the distinction between those 2 in the next video. So, central nervous system we're seeing in blue, peripheral we're seeing in the purple. Of course they connect to each other, they link to each other. One does not exist without the other. So your central nervous system, first of all, you can't live without this. It's your brain and the spinal cord. And later on in the unit we'll look in more detail, particularly at the structure of the brain. But they are linked to each other at the base of your neck there. Okay? Probably the easiest way to think about the central nervous system is it's a bit like the city loop. So what we have is all the trains going through there, or in this case all the nerves travel through there. Your spinal cord is a bundle of nerves surrounded by your spine, and that spine has that dual function of protecting all those precious nerves, as well of course of keeping you upright. It's got that structural component as well. Then we have this peripheral nervous system extending all the way out to your fingers and out through your legs, and also of course up into your head. And that's made up of 2 different types of nerves really. Sensory neurons that receive information from a stimulus, and motor neurons that get told something's happened and say, let's take action, let's move. You will notice I'm using both the term nerve and the term neuron. Okay? To be specific, a neuron, that's a type of cell. So a sensory neuron and a motor neuron, they're similar but slightly different types of cells. Nerve is one that you'll use outside the science classroom a bit more. In science, it means it's a collection of neurons. So it's a group of neurons together, or a neural pathway, so one after another, we'd say is your nerves. Now, the peripheral nervous system is very important because it connects that central nervous system to the rest of your body. Okay. And we can actually split it up, the peripheral, depending whether it's controlling a voluntary action, something you've decided you want to do, or something that you have absolutely no control over. We learn a lot about how the nervous system works by looking at what actually happens when it goes wrong. And one of the most common things is if we look at spinal injuries. So that has a pretty standard injury pathway. So we know that someone who is injured here or below would tend to get paralysis below the waist, but be absolutely fine above the waist. The higher up that spinal cord the injury is, the greater the degree of paralysis. So if you get an injury to your spinal cord right up here, which they call a C4 injury, that would result in total paralysis below the neck. Now this tells us a lot about how the spinal cord connects to the peripheral nervous system, because it tells us which bits of the messages need to get through in order for the other parts of the body to work. So we know, for instance, that anything below here is obviously essential for all the nerves in this part of the body to be used.